special guest this morning who thankfully was available for us and is up in the Detroit area. As I like to say, my ex-father-in-law wrote a song called Detroit City, and I cannot say Detroit. I have to say Detroit.
Right.
So Mr. John Clor, the enthusiast communications manager of Ford Peformance with the Ford Motor Company. Good morning, John. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Stu. This is a great honor. I appreciate the time this morning.
Hey, so cool. Don Humanic, one of our car specialists, met you down at Carlisle a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
and gave me your card, and he said, "Oh, this guy you got to talk to. He's great, and he's the Ford guru." So
I hate that name.
I know. I knew you were going to say that, but I mean, gosh, what a great gig you have. You get to travel around and talk about performance Fords. Can it get any better?
It kind of evolved to that. When I first, I thought I had the best job. I worked 15 years at the Detroit News as an editor, and then I was wanted to be the auto writer. And the auto writer back then was a guy named Bob Irvin, and he was there forever. And I got to the point where when I left the news after 14 years, I think he was 107. He was not going to retire, So I got a chance. One of my buddies, at the paper, jumped over to Auto Week magazine, which was in downtown. And he said, "John, you don't have to work weekends. Auto companies fly you all around the world to drive their cars, and you can write about cars." So I quit the paper, and I definitely wanted to make sure that I had a car job, and who would quit that? Who would quit writing about cars for not just a monthly buff book, a weekly?
A weekly. That's exactly.
That's for
right.
the guys that. That's for the guys that can't wait a whole month. That's why I decided. Why do auto writers write? Well, they want the car companies to listen to them.
Sure.
That's it. Your seats are terrible, the handling's bad. You write your review, and you just want the car companies to listen to you. But then that same guy that dragged me over to Auto Week, he quit the magazine. I was a deputy managing editor, and he was the managing editor. Now, before you say anything, Stewart, no, deputy didn't mean Barney Fife.
One bullet, right?
Yeah, that's right. And if anybody out there knows who Barney Fife is, thank God.
I won't.
You got the right audience. What a deputy did at the magazine is when the managing editor went out to play with cars and road test them, the deputy managing editor had to put a magazine out.
Right.
So
He had to actually do the work.
Yeah. So, he gets to go leave early and drives home the Corvette or the BMW or the Mercedes, or, I get to leave late. So I got the Kia or the Silverado.
Well, it's like the first choice of the pecking order in the parking lot is the guy who leaves first gets the best car. And I worked with a guy out in California, and he had a collection of about 8 cars, and we had just moved there, and he had a Pantera and a 928 Porsche, and it was the same way. Once he left and picked whatever he was driving for the day, we got to pick what was left. My buddy and I were fighting over the next car to get to take. But it was funny. It was something you mentioned about reviewing automobiles and maybe giving them a little bit of a hard time. You very rarely see a bad review of a car anymore. I mean, is it just because
that's the case, Stuart? It got to the point where some of our buff book competitors never met a car they didn't like.
Right.
And I get it because they advertise in the book, and if you bash their product, they pull their advertising and you're out of business. But it was a little different at Auto Week. We were kind of irreverent, and we had like a niche following, and I was a closet Ford guy, I would admit it. So
Right.
whenever there was a Ford long lead, I would jump on it, and I went to the 94 Mustang launch, and any kind of Ford product. But I didn't know this. My managing editor's dad was a Ford engineer who was the lead engineer on the retractable hardtop.
Oh my God, the guy must be. I mean, the workings, the inner workings of that. If you don't know,
The switches and the wiring.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I said either he was a genius or he was crazy.
Yeah, I think crazy would probably be better.
So when he had the chance to go to Ford, he jumped ship, and he kept bothering me to come join him. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We're going to work on the special vehicle team." And he said, "It's a niche group, and it's a bunch of mercenaries they're grabbing them out of buff books. They didn't want Ford guys.
Right.
They wanted people from the outside who've driven everything else to come in and market this." And he said, "We don't have any advertising budget." I go, "Well, good luck with that." I was SpongeBob.
Yeah, nice talking to you.
Yeah, how are you going to promote the special vehicle team? He said, "Through the buff books." And since we knew everybody, they're all our friends, our fellow journalists,
Right.
we created a rifle shot marketing campaign to get these products in the magazines and in the hands of reviewers to say, hey, there's this crazy bunch of guys who are making high performance Fords. And that's, I mean, to me, that was so novel. We sat at the same table with the engineers. And when we would come back from an event, they'd say, well, how did it go? Well, the guy said your gauges are terrible. Your seats suck. Right, what are you gonna, and you get to tell directly to the engineer, which is what I was doing as an auto writer, hoping they'd read it,
Right.
So it was a novel way to, it's the way car companies should be run. And I loved it. I thought it would last forever. Of course, we were disbanded in 10 years after that, and 205, because we're a bunch of renegade cowboys. We were. I mean, and when I wound up going to Ford Racing, spent 10 years there, that's where I started this whole outreach program, and where I started, hey, I had a little saying, everybody has a Mustang story.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it.
And you could be a Chevy guy. You don't have to ever have owned one. It could have been your kid in high school, the guy down the street, your uncle, your brother-in-law. Everybody has one, whether what kind of car you like or not.
That's exactly right.
That's when I kind of started chasing the stories of the owners. There are 10 million of these things out there, 58 years now. And that's when I started telling their story. And Stewart, it's been a wonderful journey, because that's where the real hobby is. It's out on the guy that's got his car of his life. Maybe he's restored it. Maybe he's had it all its life. He joins the enthusiast community. He goes to the cruise-ins. Those people have incredible stories to tell. And for the last now 10 years, with FordPeformance.com, I have my own enthusiast section. And I get to tell their story. And where do you get it? You don't get it from a desk in Dearborn.
No, you did not.
You get it by going out in the shows, right?
Because those guys will tell you more about your car than any of your engineers will know, because they they didn't have the luxury of the best equipment and the perfect tool for everything that they needed to do. They just did it the best that they could. And, guys like that are that's who we love, because guys like that are our best customers, because when they're ready to move up or change or go laterally or whatever they're going to do differently in the car world, they don't want to sell the car themselves, because their heart and pride and joy, they don't want some guy to come there and pick it apart. They don't want some guy to come there and tell them everything that's wrong with their car. So they say, you know what, Classic Automobile, you guys take it and sell it. And then that way I don't have to deal with that, so-and-so. So, but it's 58 years, the Mustang. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a story. It's been quite a journey, but, I must have had, as a journalist, I have probably 200 Mustang books in my office. And my wife said, how many Mustang books do you really need? and she's right, but a lot of these guys, I know these guys, I came up in the last 25 years of journalism with most of these authors. I've known them all. I've worked with them in some capacity, and they're all great, writers are a crazy bunch. But you know what, Stewart? When I got to Ford, I realized that in the Mustang world, almost every generation Mustang has had a dirty little secret that no one has been able to unlock. And even as a journalist, when I would ask Ford people, no, that's not true, or no comment, I don't know. Right. And so I decided to write my first book. Why would I need another one? Because I wanted to tell those stories. I wanted to, that was like 15 years ago when I wrote that. And I said, I wanted to get the Mustang is more than just a car. How did it become an icon? Why do you still see it in commercials today?
Absolutely. I mean, they said, I read somewhere yesterday, I was doing a little research, and they said that the year that it was introduced in 1964, at Christmas time of that year, 96,000 Mustang pedal cars were sold to children. Wow, that, you talk about an impact that a car has, that even the kids, little kids wanted one. I mean, wow.
Yeah, you got to start them young, but 96,000 of anything, even if it was a full-size car, would be a successful run.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, if you look at, the first year Mustangs, how many were there? Over 600,000 sold in the first?
Yeah, and within 18 months, so if you go a year and a half, because it started in April, they sold 1 million cars.
Talk about just an unmitigated home run. Just the home run.
In today's world, because of the chip shortage and supply chain issues,
right?
We get a smash hit like the Maverick pickup, and we can only sell 100,000 of them. Then they're sold out, and they say, come back next year. Can you imagine if Lee Iacocca would have sold 100,000 said, come back next year?
Exactly.
He sold 1 million.
A million.
Yeah, and Mustangs, I think, were about $2,600 new back in 64 and a half or 60. They call them 64 and a half, but obviously they're all, I guess, titled as a 65, right?
That's right.
But, it's so funny. I was looking at, how many Fords are sold, and I went on Ford's website, and the new Bronco, don't plan on ordering a 2022. It says we're sold out. You got to order it next year.
When you can't make them, Stuart, because of, somebody asked me how bad it is. And I said, well, we're like a bad Mexican restaurant. We got lots of salsa and no chips.
Yeah, that sucks. You can't.
Yeah,
What are you going to drink the salsa? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You can't enjoy it. You can't enjoy it. So it's bad right now, but the beauty of it is that we do have products that people want. And
Sure.
you're right, 58 years of 7 generations and coming up on 7 at least this coming year, we're going to have
Right.
a instrument. So the joy is how great is it that you've been able to figure out, with all the changes in society since 1964, with all the changes in tastes and likes, and continue to make a product that people like and people that fall in love with, and it's still fun to drive. That's for me the big key, and that's why I'm loving telling this big story about Mustang.
Sure. I mean, I look at the new ones and I like them as much as the old ones, and I can't say that about every car that's been re-envisioned out there. But it's interesting. And then with the electric cars coming on, I mean, the Mach-E is very popular. I hear that Pontiac is going to bring back, or General Motors is going to bring back the Pontiac Aztec and rebadge it as the Corvette E.
Oh,
Had you heard that? Yeah.
Well, Stuart,
There goes your readership and your viewership. Right?
They're all gone now. Just
All
right
late
there.
mail is going to come in. No, I was on the Aztec long lead. I remember that, and they said it was going to appeal to young people. Yeah, and then it's going to be a kid car, and of course, 40-year-old school teachers bought it.
Mhm.
So that, just like you can't. It's like, remember the Dodge La Femme? We're going to make a car that we're going to make a car for the women. Guess what? It's turned out that if you make a car that appeals to a broad spectrum of people, you don't have to focus it that narrowly. You just make it beautiful, fun to drive. And I think the bottom line today is affordable. I think cars are becoming too expensive for young people to buy. Even entry-level cars are what few of them you can still find.
What's the average price of a car these days? 40,000 plus? I'm
yeah,
sure it is. It has to be.
transaction.
Yeah. Can you imagine, a 60-month car note? And
Yes.
so you're wondering why, young people aren't into the car market. It's not because they don't like them. They just can't afford them. I think that's part of the Maverick success with remember back when the original Maverick came out, it was $1999.
Yeah.
And now the new one is $19,999.
When we return, we will talk more, possibly not about the Maverick, but about other Ford Performance products and other cool things forward with John Clor from Ford Motor Company. We'll be back in just a minute. And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast, live from the Classic Auto Mall studio in beautiful sunny downtown. No, it's not sunny. I got to quit saying that. Yeah. I'm a liar.
It's just natural.
Just natural. It's just gray out there. But hey, we've got a great guest on today, John Clor, who I'm sure I've got a gazillion things to talk to him about that I'm never going to get to all of them, as usual. I over-prepare and under-deliver, or whatever that old saying is. But you know what? The other interesting thing we were talking about with the Mustang was the fact that how many Shelbys have been built in the past 5 years compared to what was built in all the previous years prior to that. I mean, my goodness gracious. There's a new version every time you turn around, which is cool. I love that.
There's nothing against that. No. And, somebody said when we were at SVT, aren't you angry that there's guys like Shelby and Roush and Celine out there, taking your business away? And the chief engineer, the head of SVT at the time, was a guy named John Coletti. And John said, no, because for them to make a Shelby Mustang, they got to buy a Ford Mustang. Cha-ching, another sale, cha-ching.
Yeah, we'll show them.
Yeah, but and if that's the case, I'm just proud of the fact that the factory can make the GT500. Shelby's not making it, we are. And I remember when SVT, a lot of people said, were you sad that all of a sudden your SVT Cobra became a Shelby? In a way, yeah, we developed our own Cobra and we bought the Cobra name back. And then when Carroll showed up, it was kind of a shock, and we had a 2006 SVT Mustang Cobra that never came to market. It was fully developed. And then Carroll came in and it turned into the 2007 SV or Shelby GT500. But
Right.
people say, well, Carol engineered that. No, Ellen Collins
Right.
was the chief. She was the chief engineer on that car. Did Carol have an input on it? Yeah, he didn't like the shifter. He didn't like this and that. We made some changes, but the fact that we could make a car from the factory that Carol Shelby blessed and said, if I were to build this car, this is what I would do. Hey,
That's all.
that's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, you die and go to heaven on something like that. I mean, you've done it right, and I mean, the legacy of him. It's nice to see that the '60s model GT500s and 350s are starting to come into their own as far as price wise at auctions and things like that. For so long, and we all thought, when the old man left us, that the prices would skyrocket, which they really didn't, and actually a GT500 KR convertible was a bargain for a while, I think. And then now they're starting to catch on. I'm seeing them nipping on close to $400,000 at auction. So,
well, just like back in the day, I don't know, growing up, there was just a little bit ahead of me. It was more my brother's era. And you had to have more money to buy a Shelby. You didn't see a lot of Shelbys in the circles. My brother was a Woodward street racer, and my dad was a Detroit cop. So that was
I love that.
That's a great what a family dynamic I had, right? But so when you'd see the Shelby, it was the kids that lived in the better neighborhoods. They had more money. Shelbys weren't cheap back then, and today, for us growing up when the muscle car era hit, the car that you could actually attain and still get the performance was the Mach 1. And you were talking about them earlier.
Yeah. Because
you didn't pay the Shelby price, but you got the 428 and you could get the shaker and it looked all the part. Yeah. And today it's kind of the same thing. The GT500 is super expensive. The Mach is not cheap, today's new Mach 1, but it's a hell of a car. Sure. And it's kind of like you actually have to pay for that Shelby name, and I get it, but for me, for the street racer guys that brought up didn't have all that kind of money, that's a bargain, and today it's still a very good performance bargain.
Sure. We have a Ford Fairlane here that it's not the GT package, but it has everything the GT had on it without the price, because you could check all the right boxes back in the day when you ordered one. And I love the fact that people knew how to create something that is. I mean, listen, people say, why didn't you buy the convertible? Because it was only $600 more back in 1970. Well, $600 was that was like 4 or 5 house payments, or maybe more, maybe the whole.
Yeah, that's the make it or break it point. And you're right. What I liked about that era is the sleepers, like a Fairlane, the guys with the dog dish hubcaps, and you had but they just sounded a little different. And then when you went up again, it got totally embarrassed.
Right.
There was a real draw to those guys that drove the sleepers, and you can still see them at places like your Auto Mall. Sure. You can still see them showing up from now, and those are the fun cars to own.
Absolutely. I love the dog dish hubcaps, especially if they're done in a, tastefully done like a lot of these guys do, and they're making a beautiful car with spectacular paint, but they make it look that retro kind of budget-minded vehicle that kind of look a sleeper. Pulls up next to you and you go, oh, that guy's not got anything, and as he leaves you.
Retro, you can do it only so far. I remember when we did the S550 and it was a departure. A lot of people said, oh, it looks like a Fusion. Oh, that looks terrible. Every time you change the Mustang, everybody jumps off the cliff.
Right.
And and every generation, we've had a big spike in sale. People talk about the Mustang 2. The Mustang 2 was one of the second most successful Mustang launch in the history of the car. When it came out, it sold nearly 400,000 in its first year.
Wow.
It was the right car for the right time, and people all jumped off the cliff because they don't take cars into the context of their time. They take them, and every the big horse cars, oh, they're getting too big. But everyone has their following now. And when the S550 came out, oh, it doesn't look like a Mustang. Well, the taillights sure do. Right. And the front end looks like a fist. And you know what? I just came from a show called Stang Invasion out in Des Moines, Iowa. 700 cars. Right. And wow. most of the kids were driving S197s and S550s, right. and there wasn't 2 cars there, Stewart, that were alike.
Isn't that amazing?
Everybody puts their thumbprint on their Mustang.
Well, and that's what we say to people about cars here or anywhere. If you see one at Barrett-Jackson, or you see one at Mecum, or you see one here, they go, well, that car was this and this car is that. but it's not the same car. And they go, well, they look the same. Yeah, but this one may have been restored professionally. This may have been restored by an amateur. This guy used the best parts. This guy, scrimped and got where he did. And so they're not the same car. And therefore, you can't base price on that. So, but
thank God for that, because, we need to get young people involved in the hobby, and they can't be paying, a nut and bolt restoration prices. I like the guys that can get in, either they like an early model Mustang and they can get in for 20 grand.
Sure.
Or, you go to a place like the Charlotte Auto Fair and you see these young groups come in with, most of them SN95 Mustangs that are beat up and banged up, and they don't care because they got a Mustang, and I love the fact that we need an entry level product in the
absolutely, and I love when you go to the SCCA events, the autocrosses and stuff. The kids are starting to get into, and they may be in a Plymouth Neon or a 6-cylinder Mustang or something, but they're having fun. They're enjoying it. I can find. We jokingly say this all the time. At one point in time in my life, I embarrassingly say I had a minivan, but I could still find the apex of the corner in that minivan. So it was fun. You make it what it is, right?
I couldn't, because I had two hockey goaltenders, and if I found the apex, sticks would come out of the back of the minivan and hit me in the head.
Yeah, probably true. Hey, I
got a hockey guy, but no, you're totally right, Stuart. And what I'm seeing now is, people are saying, well, the hobby's going to die with the boomers, and that's not true. If you go to a car show, young people love cars; they just can't afford them.
Absolutely,
so we need to make them. We need to pass the torch to them, and I'm so glad they can come in and find a affordable, whether it's a classic or just a car they've always wanted, but to get them into the hobby and embrace this wonderful hobby, because mobility, Henry Ford wanted to build a car that everyone could own. Mobility is the essence of a free society, and everyone should be able to have their own car and not have to wait for the bus.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is that's so true. We take in $5,000 consignments and $500,000 consignments and everything in between. And we're not snobs. We like them just as well, because you got to start somewhere. Listen, does Ford starts out slow, and you get somebody in an entry level vehicle, and one day you hope to have them in an expedition or excursion or whatever else is cool. And listen, and I get it. And the electric car part of it is going to be part of the equation, whether we like it or not. Ford's, $50 billion into that and listen, this is a newsflash that it won't be for you and it won't be for me, but it might be for some people, is that electric cars are not going to take over everything. It ain't going to happen.
I'll make the analogy. 110 years ago on Woodward Avenue, Clara Ford drove an electric car, and it was called the Detroit Electric.
Right.
And she liked it because Henry made a car that made smoke and noise, and this one was quiet. The only two issues she had was range and battery recharge times.
Sure.
Well, 110 years later, what are the two issues facing the EVs?
Range
and battery recharge. I love it.
True. Yeah.
But and it may not be. It may not save the planet. People are saying the carbon footprint is actually probably very similar to an ICE engine,
right.
and it may be hydrogen. But eventually powertrains change and technology changes. And, people say, oh, the Model T was terrible. It had no airbags.
Yeah, the Model T wasn't terrible if the thing you graduated from was a horse and buggy.
That's right. Yeah.
you imagine if we still had a shovel in downtown, smelling all that?
We're in Amish country, so we'll have to. No, we're with you 100%. Or we could go back to 1975, which trivia, the lowest horsepower year for the Mustang, 87 horsepower.
Actually, it wasn't for the 4-cylinder. The lowest V8 horsepower was the Fox body.
Right.
In 1980, they took the 302 down to. Are you ready for this? 255. They had to actually get the thing down to the point where they could meet the emission standards. So the V8 in the Mustang 2 that was in even the King Cobra had 139 horsepower, and that baby only had 128 horsepower for a 255. And you know what? I used to say, don't be hating on the car. It was the era. A Corvette 350 couldn't even make 250 horsepower.
My Trans Am had 180 horsepower, and I thought I was king of the mountain,
Oh, yeah. Well, and everything's relatives, so against the Camaro, that 140 horses in a car that weighed 300 and 400 pounds less, it was very competitive,
I loved what Ford was doing back in the Road Atlanta IMSA days when they were taking 4-cylinders and turning out, 900 horsepower out of a 4-cylinder?
Well, remember SVO? And
SVO,
they said, we're never going to put a turbocharged 4-cylinder in a Mustang ever again.
Well, SVO is one of my favorite Mustangs of all time, and I know that's a cliche thing to say in the Mustang world, but I love those. They were fun to drive. We don't see them here hardly at all. Did you see many in Carlisle this year? Were there many SVO?
They had a few, but very few and far between, and there were some prime examples. But people really they didn't look significantly different. You could tell the 5 lugs and the wing on it and the hood scoop. But you know what? You're right. It was technology that sold that, Stewart. And
absolutely,
I think the future is about technology. And cars are phenomenal today. What they do, you drive a 65 Mustang, you have a little bit of fun, and then drive a new one. You say, oh my God, have we come a long way in 58 years?
Absolutely. And that's part of the success of Resto Mods is the fact that people get out of a nice car, brand new something, into a 69 Mustang, and they go, "Oh, this drives, it's a little different, sloppy comparatively." But here's the thing: some people appreciate that. Some people appreciate the fact that it's more of a challenge to drive it, to do things with it, to stop a little bit sooner or slower or whatever. And so a lot of people are just spoiled and want exactly what they want today, and I get that. And we're all spoiled. Air conditioning, I'm spoiled. We got to have air conditioning. But at the other side of the coin is that I like the challenge of driving a Model A or a Model T or a 64 Mustang or any of that stuff. So, John, if you're not terribly pressed, we'd love to have you on the third segment if you want to stick around with us for another 10 minutes or so.
Sure, because if I leave now, I got to go out and cut the grass.
Well, I'll keep you on for a little bit longer. We'll be back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast with our special guest, John Clor of Ford Motor Company, here in just a moment. Thanks. And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast with our special guest, John Clor, for our third segment of the day. Show number 44 we're doing, Steve. Hey, are we doing something right, or are we just winging it?
Like a 44 Dana.
I like that. John is the enthusiast communication manager at Ford Peformance and an all-around car guy and been around the car world forever and a day. John, Carlisle was pretty amazing this year for Ford. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the funny thing is, it set a record for the cars on the show field entries, and this is post-COVID still, and with the gas prices just completely out of hand, we were thinking, oh man, it's really going to compress the attendance and the registrations, but it actually was just the opposite. They had record attendance. Usually they get 50 to 60,000 people there that weekend, and with 2,500 cars, you think, oh my God. Now I know Ford people love the Nationals because they see all the crazy Fords there,
right.
The Lincolns and the Pintos. I remember when the Pinto did their 45th anniversary, there are almost 5,000 members of the Pinto Car Club of America.
No kidding.
And we had 99 Pintos during their last reunion there. There are Mercures. There are, the young guys, Focal Jet, the Focus Rising group had Fiestas and Focus, which we don't build those wonderful STs anymore.
Right. Those are great cars.
Oh yeah. The Lincoln guys were the Etzels. You could see the Fairlane Club, the Falcons, everything under the sun.
Right.
And that's why we go. But has Mustang kind of, encroached upon a lot of there's fewer Model A's and Model T's there. There are more Mustangs.
Sure. The Mercure, I just had forgotten all about that car until you just brought that up. That is so funny.
Yeah, what did they call in Detroit? An Exrati. You had an Exrati, an XR4 Ti.
One day, somebody we're going to see one go across the auction block, and it's going to bring 150,000, and everybody's going to go, "What? Where did that come from?"
It was. I think part of it too, Stuart, was the weather was phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people were itching to get out and go play with cars again. So I think that was part of it.
Yeah, they had the unveiling of the Bronco Raptor there, right?
Yeah, which was really cool. And the Bronco,
that thing's badass.
Oh. And what a following they've, last year they had the Strop Bronco reunion.
Yeah.
This year they had a huge reunion. They had the SSPs, the Special Service Police Mustangs were there. Every year they, Ken Appel and the Carlisle events folks do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Carlisle is just a celebration of Auto City in the middle of Pennsylvania that, is it within a day's drive of pretty much anybody east of the Mississippi? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. But I don't miss Carlisle. I'll tell you what. When it started, I just started at Ford,
right?
And I brought a Cobra R and a Lightning pickup. It wasn't electric back then, by the way, Stuart. I brought it out. I brought it up there. We were the only Ford entity at the Ford Nationals. I had a 10x10, and we set up. And I've never missed a Carlisle Ford Nationals in the entire run of the show, including both weekends that both of my sons graduated from high school.
Wow!
I said, hey, who doesn't graduate from high school?
Yeah, come on.
Take pictures. I'm going to the National.
That's expected. Well, Carlisle is only an hour west of us, so we spend a lot of time there. And we found out very quickly when we moved in here in 2018 is that, you'd think I'd have done this research before we bought the building and moved in, but that this is car culture, car city like you wouldn't believe. I would put this part of the world up against just about anywhere. Southern California, Scottsdale area, South Florida. It's an amazing car culture that we have here. And Carlisle does a great job, especially with the specialty shows, the GM show, the Ford show, the Chrysler show, the whole thing. And of course, it's one of those things that I think that as you said, people are anxious to get out and do things. And, John, as well as I do, I'm not good cooped up in the house, and I don't imagine you are either. And that was a tough couple of years with that COVID thing.
Yeah, that was tough for everybody. And, I didn't know that you guys there at the mall, you had enough space and property to hold a club car show or hold club events there. I remember doing some car shows at consignment places, and they're wonderful places to do a car show because they generally have the room you can cater a lunch, you can go see the old cars. No matter what kind of club you have, you probably have that brand in your building.
Absolutely. And we have, believe it or not, coming up next week, which will be actually the week that we're airing the show, is the Camaro Nationals here. And just about 3 weeks ago, we had the Model A Restorers Club here, and we had over 500 Model A's here.
Oh, my.
And those guys are great. And, of course, they love us because in the old days when you had a Model A and you wanted to get rid of it, you just put the word out in the club and one of the guys bought it from you. Nowadays, everybody's thinning the herd. So, so you think, but Model A's, surprisingly, John, and this blows me away, they sell very rapidly here. When we get a Model A, very rarely does it last longer than about 30 or 45 days. They sell, and they still bring, their normal 20 grand-ish, less if it's a four-door sedan, more if it's a Roadster, or a Roadster pickup even. But they sell in that price range, and even the Shays, the Model A's with a Pinto engine, and they still
Love
sell.
those.
I do too. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I like Model A's because when you look in the dictionary of antique car, there ought to be a picture of the Model A if there isn't.
Well, when I do presentations across the country, I'll speak at banquets, and I always talk about, that Ford's heritage. When you don't have heritage, we have 119 years of innovation and heritage and iconic products from the very beginning, the Model T, all the way through today. And a lot of car companies, Tesla's been around 20 years, but I'll see in 80 years. Are you still?
Yeah, exactly.
And when I talk about, if you don't have heritage, then what you got to do is you got to hire like dancing hamsters or something, and you got to create but Model A's. I tried to drive a Model T with the throttle thing, and I got
tricky.
the pedals all wrong. I wound up in a set of bushes. So the answer is, I love the Model T, but the Model A you can still drive. It actually can do 50 miles an hour on the freeway. Like you said earlier, not on the turnpike maybe, but and those cars. When you think about a hot rod, Stewart, what do you think of? You don't think of a Camry.
No, you think of a
Model A.
Yeah,
because
Ford.
after the war, when the GIs got back, and they could fix a Jeep with a rubber band and a paper clip out in the
Getting
field.
shot. Yeah, getting shot at.
Yes, right. So they get back, and what was in the back 40? Some old Model A that was pushed back there. So they chopped it and they cut the fenders off of it, and they put Edelbrocks on the flatheads or put a Cadillac engine in it. And the hot rod hobby is equated to the Deuce Coupe.
Absolutely. And then just the 90th anniversary just this past or this year of the Deuce Coupe, and they had a big thing at the Peterson, which was really cool. Bruce Meyer had his unobtainium 32s.
I actually had a good friend of mine, Matt Stone, who used to be the executive editor of Motor Trend. He writes for FordPerformance.com. That story will appear on FordPerformance.com. We kind of follow that because 90 years. I mean, it wasn't just that, Stewart. The V8, I remember some quotes where some people were saying Henry lost his mind that if he put a V shape into an engine, it would shake itself apart and break in half. They didn't believe you could, they thought how stupid Ford was. But, the flathead with all of its issues made people intoxicated with horsepower.
Right.
He's still in the Greenfield in the Henry Ford Museum have a note from bank robbers thanking Ford for the V8 for outrunning the Plymouth police cars, because power equates to fun.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and they figured that out pretty quickly. You know, that Cars That Made America is an interesting show. I don't know how accurate it is.
Not too accurate.
I wouldn't imagine it probably is, but it's still fun to watch. I was watching it not too long ago, and there was, resistance to do everything. But listen, when you had the success of the Model T that he had for how many years it was, 7, 8, whatever years, and then the success of the Model A, I mean, change has got to be difficult. You got to be thinking, man, I don't want to screw this up. And we've had a good run here. Let's don't make a monumental mistake.
Well, and the Ford has had its share of bumps in the road, but the story about Mustang, that really fascinated me. A few years back, I was able to meet Gail Halderman, who was the original designer of the 65 Mustang, and he never got really credit for it because he was just a kid out of Ohio. And his bosses, if you go into the museums, you'll find, or the research areas at Ford, you'll find other names were associated with the car. But when I got to meet Hal Sperlich, who's the father of the Mustang, not Lee Iacocca, it was Hal Sperlich's idea, and then to meet Gail Halderman, who drew the original sketch, you heard the real story, and then to hear that Henry Ford did not want that car because it was so, Edsel closed in 1960. And in 1962, Iacocca's pitching for another new car. Absolutely not. No, done with that. I mean, to hear their story, that, they got shot down 3 different times. And if it weren't for the passion of car people saying, we really truly believe in this product, that car would have never been. And that's why car people, you can say, oh, we had a Mullally as an airplane guy. We had, marketing guys, but a car person running a car company, that's how we got Mustang. And really, to me, you got to have that essence of a car person figuring out the product, because
if you let the accountants do it, you're in trouble. Because I mean, and listen, everybody says, why don't they make that car just like the concept was? That was so cool, and it had the fighter yoke, and it had this and that. It's because, first of all, it's not very practical. Second of all, it's probably not very user friendly. You think it looks cool. It's like all of us wanted a Cobra until we got one and burned our legs about 7 times on the side pipe and said, yeah, I don't know. I'm over that.
Yeah, you get out of the store, it's 115 degrees, and you sit in that little bucket seat and you say, man, where's the air conditioning?
You know what's funny? The funniest thing about the Cobra is that you remind your passenger every time when they get out, don't burn your leg on it. What do? You stick your leg right on it.
Every time.
Every single time.
Every time, yeah.
You're right. And, there's probably more glory in the old cars that we sell and love. And truly, in the Mustang Club world, people have a 66 fastback or a Boss 302. Then they said they brought their new Boss 302, and I go, why didn't you bring your 69? Well, here, I can't see out the back window. It has no air. The clutch broke my ankle.
The battery was dead. Whatever. Yeah.
Bias ply tires. So the glory is this is the glory year for Mustangs, right? And really for muscle cars with the Challenger and Camaro.
Oh my God.
This is the muscle car era. Right
and and there was a time not that long ago that we thought there will never be muscle cars or cars of performance ever again. About 74, 75, you're thinking, well, by the time I can afford a car, they're going to be long gone. There's nothing cool. Nothing's going to be fast. And look, I mean, the new, the Hellcats and the Demons and the Shelbys and the 800, 900 horsepower from the factory. Yeah. Crazy.
Way better even than the Boss 9s and the Yanko Camaros, and they couldn't turn a corner like they do.
Go drive a Boss 9 for about 15 minutes and tell me how much fun it is. It ain't that much fun, especially
for $500,000.
Yeah, especially if you're driving at any speed, 60 miles an hour plus, because that thing is redlining, and it sounds like it's going to fall apart when you're doing 60 miles an hour. And I get it.
We sure have come a long way, but you know what? The issue is, like a lot of these cars are going to go away now. You can't keep the companies need to build their own icons. They can't keep, Mustang has been around a long time. It's changed a lot. And luckily they've hit that little hot button of fun, but that won't last forever. And sooner or later, like when the Tesla came out, I still don't think it's a pretty looking car.
No,
it doesn't have a grille. And I think design still drives cars. And I'm really happy that people still love a good looking car.
Me too.
Because for me, I don't like Swiss Army knives. Gail Halderman told me before he passed away, he's glad he's not a designer at Ford today, because the SUVs all are jelly beans and all you can design are headlights and taillights.
Yeah, because all those guys came from the same school that taught them aerodynamics and fuel savings have to be this design, and they all came up with, even separately, they all came up with the same design. And I think that we're getting rid of cars. I mean, there's how many cars does Ford manufacture now?
Just the Mustang.
Yeah, General Motors is down to one car. Do they even produce one car at General Motors now that I can think of? I don't know.
I think they have
Cadillac.
two.
Yeah. Cadillac, has. But I mean, and then the naming of them. I love cool names, Mustang or Challenger, or now it's the X1P.
Totally insane.
I know it.
Totally wrong. And it was like the Lemmings, the Europeans did it, so they thought it was good for us. Americans like the cool names that we've all, Mustang, part of its success, it's a great name. It's a
Absolutely.
freedom, a wild horse out west. I mean, it's meant that for millions of people all of these years. So you're right. I'm not happy with the way people are naming a lot of people in the Maverick community. Man, why don't you call it a Ranchero? I get all that traditionalism, but you can't keep sticking great names on new cars and thinking the name will sell the car. The car sells the car.
Absolutely. And don't you think that's kind of part of the little bit of the issue with the Mach-E is that people have that, that romantic, the name of the, Mustang Mach-E, and to see it in something that's not a Mustang proper like we think it is that's part of it. I mean,
it's a huge pushback from traditionalists, and they still hate the whole idea. But Jim Farley he's going up against the cool factor of Tesla, and he said, "What's the cool factor at Ford? It's Mustang." So he stuck the pony on it. The fact of the matter is, it's a great car on its own. And some guy told me, "What do you think of the Mach-E?" And I had a buddy out of New York who said to me, Mach-E, we had a Mercury Mach-E back there in 1978. That ain't a new name. So you got to watch out for those New York accents.
We've got to do this again, John. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
We got lots more to talk about.
Absolutely. And next time you're on the Turnpike, you got to stop in and say hello to us.
I do want to come by. I've got some shows coming up in the fall. I do want to stop in. If you don't mind, I'll ring your doorbell.
Yeah, I'll send you an email if you don't have I think you got all my contact info, and we'll look forward to seeing you at a show or here sometime in the future.
That would be great, Stewart.
Take care, John. Thanks so much for being on. Thank you all for listening this week. Hopefully next week we'll have some news and another guest if we can figure this out. Take care, and we'll see you from the Classic Auto Mall podcast.